Thank you, Michael, and thank you to Seth to invite me to be part of this global conversation. From the beginning of the pandemic, the churches in Australia have been advocating and supporting people who are most vulnerable, including people who are refugees, those seeking asylum, seasonal workers, and international students. Some of the challenges that we've seen them facing are language barriers to information about COVID-19 and also barriers to accessing medical care. Some of our churches have people with language and cultural skills who've assisted in translation and information sharing. Our government have worked to offer support packages, but people who are on temporary visas, people who are seeking asylum, and casual workers, including international students, were not covered. Some emergency payments have been made available at federal and state levels, but they're not substantial. The churches have been engaged in advocacy programs, including the campaign with the Refugee Council of Australia, Nobody Left Behind, that calls on the government to provide more substantial support. Refugees and international students have also been impacted by job losses where they've been working in service or hospitality industries hit by the decline in employment due to COVID-19. Loss of income then puts strain on housing, rental, food and healthcare. Some of these people are accessing charitable organisations, including local church emergency relief centres. One service reported a more than 200% increase in those accessing the service. Seasonal and migrant workers have also been impacted. With lockdown and border closures, seasonal workers have been stuck in regions with no work and are not allowed to move to the next agricultural region. In Shepparton, Victoria, one of our Uniting Church ministers, who's a Tongan Australian, has been working with these seasonal workers in supporting them pastorally and practically and ensuring that the government funding that is coming through is made accessible to them. In Australia, international students have been similarly impacted. This is a sizable group and a number of our local churches are involved in supporting international students practically with food, support for accommodation, and mental, emotional, and spiritual support. Women have been impacted more significantly where their employment has been in service and hospitality industries. Women have picked up the greater portion of childcare and homeschooling when schools have been closed. Children face barriers in homeschooling and some of the communities do not have access to suitable IT equipment for online learning. And there are concerns about people's mental health in the isolation caused by the pandemic. We're deeply concerned about increased levels of domestic violence, with perpetrators being in lockdown with their partners and children, and the women finding it more difficult to access support. One of the great strengths we have seen in this time of our local churches have been in those who are already engaged in ministry with newly arrived migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, and international students. They've already built the relationships and were very aware of some of the immediate and longer term impacts of COVID-19. Churches have supported people to connect more widely through video conferencing and have been able to connect with family and friends internationally and connect with those who are very isolated. Churches have also been involved in addressing racism in places where blame for the spreading of the virus was directed to migrants who are forced to live in more densely populated areas and houses and are more likely to be working in high-risk locations. I've drawn hope at this time from the collaboration across churches and non-government and government agencies which have been responsive and attentive to people most impacted. I've been impressed by people's willingness to open their hearts to their neighbours through the lens of God's radical hospitality. So in a time of fear and uncertainty for us, there have been people and communities who've truly embraced the call of Christ to love our neighbour and create welcoming communities where all people are able to live the abundant life that God desires for us all. Thank you, Michael.